Discover the incredible secret: the poor mechanic, 30, revealed to be a handsome billionaire. In the heart of a small Midwestern town, Jake was the definition of charm wrapped in grease-stained overalls. His father's auto repair shop, a modest little place, crackled with life. There were the loud clangs of tools, the sharp scent of motor oil, and all around, the loving laughter of neighbors catching up while waiting for their cars. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake wiped his hands on a rag, poured himself into fixing his neighbors' broken engines, never asking for a penny in return. He wore his heart on his sleeve. It was the American way to lend a hand, to work hard, and to build community. Behind that generous spirit was a secret that could shatter everything he held dear. Jake was heir to a billion-dollar fortune, something his wealthy family expected him to embrace. But the echo of his father's voice, preaching integrity and grit, kept him chained to the shop. The world outside, with its glimmering parties and pristine penthouses, wasn't for him. He found solace in the connections forged in wheels and motors, in fixing cars that transformed people's lives. Then came Sarah, her old sedan sputtering into the shop, desperately needing help. With 2 kids at home, her worries were palpable. As Jake listened to her warm voice share stories of motherhood and heartache, he felt something blossoming between them. Over simple cups of coffee, beneath the flickering fluorescent lights, they began to weave a bond stronger than any steel. With every workshop, every shared laugh, he found cracks in his guarded heart, and her unwavering strength became the light in his rather gray world. But trouble loomed large. Scarcely weeks into their connection, news hit like a thunderclap: the local factory was shutting down. Panic spread fast in the tight-knit community. Families would lose their homes, the streets would grow silent, and all Jake's neighbors, his friends, would suffer. Torn between the overwhelming urge to share his wealth to save the town, to step into the light and reveal his true self, and the fear of being ostracized, Jake grew anxious. Could they really see him as more than a privileged outsider? Would Sarah's eyes shift from affection to disdain if she discovered the gilded secret he hid? In those feverish days, he saw whispers pass between friends, fear and doubt swelling in the air around the shop. As he prepared to face the music and reveal who he really was, Jake overheard discussions that squelched his courage. Friends questioned if he was no different from the very people they resented. As fear gripped his heart, he couldn't shake the feeling that the truth would change everything: his relationship with Sarah, his role in the community. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the factory's closing date fast approaching, Jake sat on the edge of that precipice, dangling over a decision that felt heavier than any engine he'd ever lifted. Would he reveal his true identity and risk everything? As the seconds ticked away, an air of tension enveloped the shop, and as he looked around at the faces of those he cared for, he faced the most pressing question of all: can he fight for a town that needed saving, or continue to shield them from the truth of who he was? As the sun rose the next morning, the tension in Jake's chest felt more suffocating than ever. He swept the floor of the shop mechanically, lost in thought. Each sweep sent the dust swirling, much like the whirlwind of emotions in his heart. A decision loomed before him, echoing louder than the roar of a revving engine. He needed to act, and fast. Jake's tight-knit community had always relied on each other, but now, with the factory closing, the need for support was more urgent than ever. He could feel the weight of everyone's expectations. Each pair of eyes might as well have been daggers piercing through him as they looked around, searching for hope. But there was a deeper pain that gnawed at him. Would he lose their trust forever if they knew who he really was? "Hey there, Jake." Sarah's voice rang through the shop, a melody that nearly broke through his turmoil. He turned to see her, bright and warm as ever, carrying a box of donuts. The gesture tugged at his heart. She was always so thoughtful. "Hi, Sarah," he managed, putting on a smile. He looked forward to their chats, the way her laughter spilled like sunshine into the corners of his dark worries. But as she approached, he felt his resolve crumbling. She deserved the truth, didn't she? Thought you could use a pick-me-up, she said, her eyes sparkling with kindness. She placed the box on the workbench and began rifling through it. I got your favorite. Suddenly he was reminded of the risk he took every time she walked through that door. She had opened a door in him, one he had thought locked forever. But he was now standing on the precipice of another choice. Putting off the truth felt increasingly impossible, especially when faced with the warmth of her concern. Sarah, about the factory, he started, his voice faltering as he reached out to take one of the donuts. Suddenly, his appetite faded. The words felt heavy, anchored down by fear. Yeah, it's just awful, she replied, frowning as she noticed his tone. I've been thinking about the kids. What if things really take a turn for the worse? I can't keep spinning plates forever. Her vulnerability sparked concern inside him. This was it, the moment of truth or the illusion of safety? An idea struck him, lightning fast. What if he hesitated, catching her gaze? What if I could help? Like, really help? The breath he held felt more like a stone lodged in his throat as he caught a flicker of something in her eyes, hope mingled with doubt. Jake, you mean with what? She asked, tilting her head curiously. He swallowed hard, heart pounding. This was the first step, a tiny crack in the dam set against the tide of his truth. There are ways I could invest in the town and jobs. I need to be sure it's what everyone wants. His fluttering heart clashed with the growing conviction inside him. Sarah paused, scrutinizing his expression. You mean you're thinking about using your money? For a heartbeat, he was frozen. Would she recoil from him? Would she see him as one of those nameless, faceless rich people? But instead of turning away, she seemed to lean closer. Jake, if you're serious about helping, that could change everything, she whispered, her eyes wide with possibility. And there it was, the first spark of hope in a situation fraught with despair. But as elation danced over his heart, the reality of his secret loomed above him like a thundercloud ready to burst. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he could almost see the path ahead. But would he find the strength to walk it? As Sarah's gaze bored into him, he felt something shift within, the unmistakable urge to reveal every piece of himself, not just the part that was ready to act, but the whole, imperfect man behind the grease stains. But just as he was about to say it all, the shop door banged open, and in marched a torrent of angry voices. News had broken out. The factory was set to close, and in that moment, chaos erupted. Jake's heart raced. What had they just walked into? Would he still have the chance to reveal his secret, or would the shadows swallow him whole? Jake's heart sank as a wave of chaos rolled into the shop. Angry voices clashed like metal against metal, echoing in the small space. He looked at Sarah, whose eyes widened in panic, mirroring his own fear. There was no hiding now, the storm had arrived. Did you hear the news? The factory is shutting down tonight. A man shouted, his face flushed with outrage. Jake recognized him, Tom, a father of 3 who had poured his life into the factory. Tom's fury resonated with the others. They fed off each other's anger, each accusation spiraling into a frenzy. What are we supposed to do? Another voice whimpered, and the vulnerability in that question sliced through the clamor. It was a punch to Jake's gut. He had been thinking of solutions, but now he felt swallowed up by the reality of despair around him. Guys, please. He raised his voice, trying to cut through the noise. Let us talk this through. The eyes turned towards him, confusion and frustration marring their features. He was just Jake, the mechanic, the guy who fixed their cars and shared Friday night beers. But right now, they needed something more from him. They needed a leader, a glimmer of hope amidst burgeoning hopelessness. Instead of the immediate support he hoped for, the tension thickened. What do you know about it? Tom snapped. You're just a mechanic. This is bigger than all of us. Jake swallowed hard. The weight of their expectations bore down on him, and suddenly, all he felt was small and insignificant. Could he really step forward? He took a step closer, searching their faces for understanding. Look, he started, letting out a shaky breath. I know it's hard, and I might not have all the answers, but I can help. I can help us. A murmur rippled through the crowd, surprise etching across their faces. So, what do you want to do? Hand out job applications? Someone shouted sarcastically, the incredulity hanging in the air like smoke. Actually, I was thinking of using the savings, the investments I have, to create new opportunities. I know it seems crazy, his voice faltered, veins thrumming with dread. Would they see him as a fraud? Just then, Sarah stepped forward, her eyes steady and fierce. Jake's right. If anyone can steer this town in the right direction, it's him. He's always cared about us. Her unwavering conviction sent warmth blooming in his chest. But rough skepticism still pulsed through the crowd. How do we know he can be trusted? What does he really want? The core of truth twisted and knotted in Jake's stomach. He took a deep breath and said, I can show you. I want to work to revive our town and this community. But for that to happen, I need your trust, your support. He glanced at Sarah, and then back to the crowd. Their faces reflected doubt, but in doubt flickered something else, a flicker of hope. As whispers of uncertainty mingled with the mounting anger, a strong wave surged through Jake. Suddenly, he felt he had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. Let me show you who I am, he blurted out, his heart thundering in his chest. I've wanted to be part of this community as more than just your mechanic. I'm more than that. Gasps filled the air. Heads turned to one another, eyebrows raised. The shift had begun, but it was only the first step. He could feel the ground shifting beneath him, and it terrified him. And then, amidst the rising chaos and restless voices, Jake made a choice. He would reveal his truth, his past, a past that shaped him and held secrets he had long concealed. The revelations hung on his lips, a truth poised to break free. But as he opened his mouth to speak, a loud crash shattered the tense atmosphere, replacing the charged energy with instant dread. What disaster was unfolding now? What more could befall them? The crowd fell silent, the air thick with anxiety. All eyes shifted toward the back of the shop as a figure emerged from the shadows, breathing heavily. It was Mike, the old delivery driver, his face pale and eyes wide with shock. Jake! He shouted, his voice breaking through the dazed quiet. The factory, it's not just shutting down. There's something bigger. They're selling the land, to make way for a new development. The words hung in the air, a chilling proclamation that sent ripples through the gathered group. What? Tom's voice rose again, a blend of anger and fear trembling in his tone. You mean to tell us that everything we've built here, our homes, our livelihoods, is being traded like a piece of property? The tension crackled like a live wire as Mike nodded. They're not just laying off workers. They're coming for everything. A chorus of angry voices erupted again, a wave of desperation overtaking the room. Jake felt the chaos rise and crash, like water against a jagged cliff. His heart raced as he glanced around, trying to gauge the emotions swirling before him. Rage, frustration, despair, they all blended together into a maelstrom of uncertainty. Everyone, please! Jake shouted, forcing his voice above the rising tide. If we're going to fight this, we need to come together. He sensed the magic of the moment, the power of community needed at every turn. He could feel Sarah's hand on his arm, urging him on, reminding him that this was the moment he had been waiting for. Do something! Shouted another voice, accompanied by a clatter. A man knocked over a toolbox in anger, sending wrenches clattering to the floor. Do we stand and let them run over us, or fight back? His heart hammered fiercely against his ribcage. You're right, he said, mustering every ounce of courage. They are taking from us, but we can take it back. We need to unite, strike a deal, or even sabotage their plans if we have to. The crowd shifted, their gazes sharpening. For a moment, Jake felt a spark ignite within him, a sense of purpose blossoming brightly against the shadows of despair. We have to organize a meeting with the town council, mobilize everyone in the community. We can't let them do this. Tom clenched his fists, the fury in his eyes now tinged with determination. We'll fight for our jobs. We'll fight for our families. The crowd's murmurs morphed into a deafening roar of agreement. But just as the tide seemed to be turning, doubt flickered behind the anger. And what if they don't listen? Someone shouted from the back. What if we fail? Jake felt the weight of that question settle heavily on his shoulders. It was a risk, a gamble, but he couldn't back down now. We're not alone, he declared, a fire igniting in his belly. I'll put my whole savings on the line for us to start something new, something that can stand against them. A hush fell over the crowd, the sincerity in his voice capturing the hearts of those who listened. Could he really pull this off? Would they trust him enough to lead them? As hope began to buoy amidst the doubt, a sudden realization struck him. This is our home. No one can take that away from us, not without a fight. Just as they began to rally together, there was another loud crash outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of approaching sirens. Panic surged anew through the group. What were they planning now? Jake's pulse quickened. We need to move, and fast, or they'll take everything from us before we even get a chance to fight back. And with that, tension surged in the tiny shop once more, readying itself for the storm that lay ahead. What had started as chaos now felt like a call to arms. But as they scrambled for answers, worry gnawed at the pit of Jake's stomach. What hidden threats loomed on the horizon? Did he have what it took to save the very community he called home? As the police sirens screamed closer, he knew one thing for sure: the fight was just beginning. Would they stand up together, or would fear fracture them apart? The sound of sirens grew louder, slicing through the tension in the air. Jake felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He could see the panic on faces around him, angry cries turning into frightened whispers. This was it. They had to act or risk losing everything. Stay together, he shouted, trying to maintain some semblance of order. We move as one. Sarah squeezed his arm, her eyes fierce. We can't let them intimidate us. Reluctantly, the crowd began to form a line, one that reflected their anger and fear but also a newfound determination. As they stepped outside, they were met with a jarring scene. Several police cars were parked haphazardly, lights flashing brightly. Officers in blue uniforms were milling about, their presence a stark reminder of the fight that lay ahead. Jake, over here. Tom's voice called from the side. He was pointing to a group of familiar faces, friends and neighbors who had come in response to the commotion. Their eyes mirrored Jake's angst but also the hope that sparked within the gathering. Jake nodded, feeling the swell of camaraderie wash over him. We need to bring everyone together. He stepped toward the throng, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Listen. The council needs to know we're here. We deserve to be heard. A few people cheered, emboldened by his words. Among the crowd, Jake spotted Mrs. Thompson, the older woman who had lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone. You tell Jake, she encouraged, her face a tapestry of lines etched by time and struggle. We've built this place together. We won't stand by while they take it from us. The loud engines of the police cars echoed in the background, threatening to engulf their determination. But the growing crowd pressed closer, their collective dread shifting into a fierce energy, an understanding that they had to protect what little they had left. A tall officer stepped forward, stern and commanding. What is going on here? He demanded, his expression giving nothing away. Sir, Jake said, stepping up as a spokesperson for the crowd. We're not causing trouble. We're standing up for our rights. The factory is closing, and we believe something more sinister is happening. We want answers. The officer's brow furrowed, but his posture relaxed slightly. I understand your concerns, but this is a public area. You need to disperse. The words stung. The fight for their community felt fragile, and Jake's heart raced as he scanned the crowd, looking for any flicker of doubt. Would they back down? Or would they press forward, despite the odds? No. Someone shouted. It was Lisa, a young mother holding her child tightly. If we leave, they'll think we don't care. We care. This is everything to us. A wave of determination rippled through the gathering, reigniting their resolve. As tensions flared, Jake stepped back, witnessing the metamorphosis of his friends and neighbors. People who had once stood in separate corners of the community were now united, each one growing bolder with every passing moment. But the officer raised his hands, trying to maintain control. You can express your concerns, but you need to do it peacefully. Jake inhaled, feeling the weight of responsibility. We will be heard. Together, we're more than just individuals, we're a community. And just like that, his words hung in the air. They had taken a stand, but the path ahead remained steep. Suddenly, another figure appeared in the crowd, one Jake recognized immediately, Ms. Harris, the town councilwoman. Her presence sent a surge of electricity through Jake. Would she stand with them? As she approached, Jake held his breath. The collective murmurs hushed, all eyes on her. I've heard you, and we need to talk, she said, her tone firm yet compassionate. Let us discuss how we can help. Hope flickered across the faces around him. But deep down, Jake sensed that this was only the beginning. What would the councilwoman reveal? What was the cost of their fight? With adrenaline pumping through his veins, Jake knew they had to be ready for whatever lay ahead. As Ms. Harris stepped forward, an impending question loomed in his mind. What dark secrets would they uncover next? Ms. Harris paused, her eyes scanning the crowd, taking in the desperation mixed with determination. I know you feel betrayed, she continued, her voice rising to match the intensity in the air. Let us not allow fear to dictate our actions. Let us have a conversation. If you allow me, I can help. Jake's heart pounded. Her words filled him with an undeniable sense of urgency. Were they really about to get a chance to voice their struggles? Why are they shutting down our factory, Miss Harris? We deserve answers. Someone from the back yelled, igniting a chorus of similar shouts. Exactly. Sarah echoed, stepping beside Jake, her cheeks flushed with emotion. What will happen to our jobs? What about our families? Ms. Harris raised both hands, demanding silence. I need you to trust me. There are things happening that you don't yet understand, things that can impact us all. But together, we can make them listen. The murmurs of dissent softened as curiosity began to replace some of the tension. People leaned in, hanging on every word. Yet, Jake noticed the flicker of doubt dance across some faces, including his own. What could possibly be so complicated? Before he could voice his concerns, Ms. Harris resumed, we will schedule a meeting. Together with the council and the factory owners, we'll make sure your voices are heard. But I need you all to keep it peaceful and respectful. Can you do that? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. They were on edge, but the promise of dialogue ignited a flame of hope. Slowly, hands began to rise in nods of agreement, but Jake couldn't shake the apprehension growing in the pit of his stomach. Let us gather here tomorrow at noon. He shouted. We'll show them we're not backing down. The crowd cheered, their energy sparking like fireworks in the night sky. As the chanting and clapping began, Jake pulled Sarah aside. What if this meeting doesn't go the way we want? What if they have their own agenda? Her gaze was steady. Then we'll be ready. We know what we're fighting for. We've come this far together. We owe it to one another to keep pushing. Jake nodded, the knot of worry in his chest tightening. Ms. Harris was their only link to the truth, yet he wondered what secrets the council might be hiding. The thought sent chills up his spine. The crowd thinned gradually as people dispersed, the adrenaline started to ebb. Jake exchanged worried glances with his friends, but each expression mirrored his thoughts. They were all in this together. That night, Jake lay awake, replaying the events in his mind. The sirens, the crowd, and the tension. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something much larger than a factory shutdown. It felt like the foundation of their lives was crumbling, and the path forward was tangled in shadows. Just as he began to drift off, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Tom jolted him awake. "Jake, I've heard some rumors about the factory. Meet me at the diner in an hour. It's important." Panic surged through Jake. What could be so crucial that it couldn't wait until the morning? He jumped out of bed, throwing on a jacket. This could be the push they needed to uncover the truth or the beginning of something he never anticipated. As he exited his house, the night air swallowed him whole. The streets were quiet, but a storm of uncertainty brewed inside him. What game were they playing, and what kind of secrets lay in the shadows? Tomorrow would be their chance to speak up, but right now, he had to find out what Tom was hiding. The truth felt closer than ever, but would it lead to salvation or despair? The diner was a familiar place, with its flickering neon sign and the smoky scent of fries wafting through the air. As Jake pushed open the door, a small bell chimed, breaking the silent anticipation that buzzed in his chest. The late-night crowd was sparse, just a couple of truckers at the counter and an elderly couple sharing a slice of pie. But his eyes quickly found Tom, who was seated at a booth in the corner, looking overly tense for this time of night. "Jake," Tom said, leaning forward, his eyes darting around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Thanks for coming. What is going on?" Jake slid into the booth across from him, worry threading through his stomach like a knot. "You said it was important." Tom took a deep breath. "I heard something today, something about the factory closure. There's more happening than just financial issues. Rumors are swirling about a buyout." "A buyout?" Jake's brows furrowed. "What do you mean? By who?" "I don't know yet, but it's not just a simple corporate game. They're talking about shifting all operations overseas, laying everyone off." Tom's voice dropped to a whisper, fueled by urgency. "And it sounds like some board members stand to gain a lot from this deal." Jake's heart raced. Thoughts of his friends, of Sarah, all floating to the surface. This can't be happening. We can't let them just walk away while we lose everything. "I know," Tom said, his expression grim. "But here's the twist. I overheard them discussing plans to keep it quiet until after tomorrow's meeting. They want to feign ignorance. That's why we need to act fast." As Tom spoke, a flood of emotions washed over Jake: anger, betrayal, and a flicker of hope. "We can expose them. We can tell everyone before it's too late," he said, his voice gaining strength. Tom nodded, urgency etched on his face. "But we need proof. Something solid that we can present at the meeting. Otherwise, it'll just be our word against theirs, and who will believe us?" "Then let us get proof," Jake replied, his resolve hardening. "Tonight, we have to dig deeper. We can't let this die down. They might think they can play us, but we know our worth. Everyone is counting on us." For a moment, a spark of adrenaline flickered between them. The diner faded into the background, and it felt like the world was narrowing down to their mission. Jake's mind raced through possibilities. There had to be records, emails, something that would give them leverage. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, a message from Sarah. "Where are you? Something feels off. I'm worried." Jake glanced up at Tom, a thought threading through his mind. "We need her help. She can pull contacts from the factory, might have leads we don't know about. You cool with that?" Tom hesitated, then nodded, determination creeping into his voice. "Absolutely. The more eyes, the better. Let us go get her." Jake's pulse quickened at the thought, a sense of urgency enveloping him as they sprinted out of the diner, leaving behind the half-empty plates. The cold night air bit at his cheeks, fueling a fire inside him. Tomorrow, when they gathered at the factory, it would be more than just a meeting. It would be a reckoning. A chance to stand up and fight. But as they raced towards Sarah, another question loomed large over Jake's heart: were they prepared for whatever truth awaited them? What they discovered next could change everything. Would they be brave enough to face it head-on? The chill of the night air made Jake's breath visible, the small puffs mingling with the tension he felt inside. He and Tom made their way down the cracked sidewalk, their boots echoing on the pavement as they hurried to Sarah's apartment. Each step urged them forward, a silent promise to each other that they would do whatever it took to save their friends, their jobs, their lives. As they approached the weathered building, Jake couldn't shake the growing pit in his stomach. He glanced over at Tom, who matched his worried expression. What if we can't find anything? What if we're jumping at shadows? Then we keep digging until we catch the light, Tom replied, clenching his jaw. There was fire in his eyes, and it reassured Jake, even if just a little. They climbed the creaking stairs to Sarah's floor, the worn wood groaning under their weight. Jake knocked on her door, each rap echoing louder in his mind. The seconds felt like hours as he paced back and forth, brushing his fingers against the cool metal door handle. Finally, the door swung open, revealing Sarah in a large hoodie, her dark hair slightly tousled. Jake? Tom? What's wrong? Her eyes widened, swimming with concern. We need your help, Jake said, stepping into her apartment, the familiar scent of cinnamon and coffee wrapping around him. It was a stark contrast to the brewing storm outside. It's about the factory. Things are worse than we thought. What do you mean? Sarah's voice trembled as she shut the door behind them. Jake quickly filled her in on Tom's overheard conversation, watching as her expression shifted from fear to determination. They can't just take everything away from us. This is our community, our lives depend on this place. She exclaimed. I know, Jake replied, his heart racing at the shared frustration. We need to gather evidence before tomorrow. Do you have any contacts or information that could help us? Sarah bit her lip, her mind racing. I might have access to the company's digital files. There's an IT server nobody thinks to check. They keep documents there about operations, budgets, everything. But I'll need a plan to get to it. Tom's eyes brightened with a glimmer of hope. If we can get in, we can find what we need before the meeting. You're brilliant, Sarah. As they began discussing a strategy, Jake couldn't help but feel a swell of gratitude for these two people standing alongside him. They were ready to fight, ready to face whatever truth lay ahead. But with every new thought that bubbled up, fear lingered at the edges of his mind. What if they were caught? What if this was all a pointless pursuit that could put them in deep trouble? The clock ticked loudly, reminding them how little time they had. They threw around ideas like wildfire, mapping out their roles and the risks involved. Each option brought new layers of adrenaline but also a sense of vulnerability that gnawed at Jake's gut. No matter what happens, we stick together, right? He finally said, locking eyes with each of them. Absolutely, Sarah affirmed, her voice steady and strong. Always, Tom said, his hand tightening into a fist. With their spirits ignited, the trio stepped back outside, ready to confront the shadows waiting for them. As they gathered their thoughts and resources, one unyielding question hung in the air: could they really pull this off? And what if the truth they uncovered was more dangerous than they ever expected? Tomorrow would not just be about a meeting. It could lead to a fight for everything they held dear. But would they be prepared for the fallout? The next day dawned gray and overcast, as if the sky were mirroring the tension swirling through Jake's chest. He met Tom and Sarah outside the factory, each one of them noticeably quieter than the day before. The air was thick with anticipation and concern. The stakes had never felt higher. Okay, let us review the plan, Jake urged, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. Sarah, you'll head to the server room while Tom and I create a distraction. Right, Sarah replied, pulling her hair back into a tight ponytail. I'll disable the security cameras for a few minutes. That should give me enough time to grab the files. Tom nodded, his hands twitching at his sides. And if things go sideways? Jake clenched his jaw, the weight of uncertainty pressing down in his stomach. Then we keep moving. We don't stop until we get what we need. They all exchanged glances, an unspoken agreement flickering in each pair of eyes. Together, they moved toward the factory entrance, their hearts pounding like a drum in a parade. As they stepped inside, the smell of grease and machinery filled their nostrils. It was a familiar scent, one that used to bring comfort, but today it felt suffocating. Jake caught a glimpse of workers milling about, their faces blank, lost in their own world, unaware of the quiet storm brewing around them. "Stick to the plan," Jake whispered, trying to steady himself against the visceral tension in the air. They split up once they reached the break room, overlooked by a large glass window. Sarah darted towards the stairs, while Jake and Tom prepared themselves for the next phase. "We need to attract attention," Tom suggested, his voice barely a whisper. Jake nodded and pointed to the coffee machine. "Let us make a scene." With Tom's help, Jake knocked over the coffee canister, sending coffee grounds scattering across the floor. The noise drew several curious heads, allowing Sarah to sneak away unnoticed. "Hey! What is going on here?" a supervisor barked, rushing in with a furrowed brow. "We thought it was broken." Tom replied, his tone casual, but his heartbeat raced. "Clean that up." The supervisor's voice thundered as he gestured, motioning towards the mess. As the attention shifted to them, Jake strained to catch a glimpse of Sarah through the glass window. She was completely focused, her fingers dancing over the keyboard. He felt his heart hammering harder in his chest. Would they really be able to pull this off? Moments turned into an eternity as Tom and Jake exchanged anxious glances. The supervisor, now at the edge of his patience, looked as if he might take further action. Finally, the door creaked open. "Got it," Sarah whispered, her eyes glittering with triumph. She slipped back towards them, a small flash drive clutched tightly in her palm. "I couldn't believe the files were unprotected. Let us move before we're missed," Jake urged. Just as they turned to leave, they heard voices echoing down the corridor. Jake's chest tightened as he recognized one of the voices. It was his boss, and he was coming this way. "Go. Now," he shouted, adrenaline surging through him. They bolted down the hallway, the sound of footsteps behind them sending panic coursing through their veins. They couldn't be caught now. Not after coming this far. As they raced towards the exit, Jake could hear the supervisor yelling for security. His heart felt like it was about to explode. Would they get caught? What would they do if they were trapped here with the evidence in their possession? Each person in the small group understood the weight of what they carried. It was more than just a flash drive. It was potentially their only chance to expose the truth. Jake glanced around, breathless. "We have to make it out without them knowing," he urged. The door loomed ahead, but the voices grew louder. Fear and determination propelled them forward. They couldn't let this be the end. Not now. As they burst through the exit and into the open air, a daunting realization hit Jake. They might have escaped for now, but tomorrow would bring the true confrontation. And amid the looming specter of discovery, he asked himself one final question: what would they uncover when they finally dared to face the truth? The sun hung low on the horizon as the trio gathered at their makeshift command center, a small table outside a diner, their heads huddled together. The weight of the flash drive felt heavier than gold in Jake's pocket, but it was more than that. It represented hope, resilience, and the fight for their community. "Okay, so what do we have?" Jake whispered, urgency dousing his words. He was both terrified and energized at the prospect of exposing the factory's plans. Sarah glanced around to ensure no one was eavesdropping before pulling out the flash drive, her eyes wide with excitement. "I got access to their digital files. This will shine a light on everything they've been up to. We need to analyze this before presenting it to the town council." Tom nodded, resolve etched on his face. They can't hide behind their facade anymore. They must be made accountable for what they've done. The determination hanging in the air ignited a flicker of confidence within Jake. This was their moment to reclaim their town, to stand up and fight back against the tide washing over them. But as they sifted through the information on the drive, the atmosphere shifted from hope to dread. Each document they opened confirmed their worst fears: projections of factory closures, plans for asset sales, and whispered names of developers poised to profit from their community's pain. "They can't just sell our lives like this," Jake exclaimed, fists clenched in disbelief. "Tonight, we need to rally everyone," Sarah insisted, her voice steadying under the pressure. We take this to the street. If we show unity, they'll have to listen. Right. Tom agreed, and Jake felt the energy surge through him. It was time to reveal the truth. They picked up their pace, spreading the word through neighbors, friends, and community members. Each phone call sparked a flicker of hope in his heart and forged a collective sense of urgency across the town. As the sun began to set, casting an orange and pink glow over everything, the town square became a sea of faces, people standing together, no longer alone. Jake stood in the center, his heart thrumming louder than ever before. Sarah and Tom flanked him, their presence a comforting weight. "Thank you all for coming," Jake said, his voice steady yet trembling with emotion. "Today, we stand at the crossroads. They may try to take our jobs, but they cannot take our spirit." A chorus of voices echoed his sentiments, igniting the strength of their unity. "There's more to this," he continued, holding up the flash drive like a torch. "We've uncovered their plans. They're not just closing the factory, they're planning to sell our livelihoods to make profits." Gasps filled the square, and he felt the swell of anger ripple through the crowd. "Together, we can rally against this. We deserve transparency, respect, and to be heard. We will not be silenced." The chants grew louder, people chanting their resolve as hope intermingled with fury. With every cheer, Jake could feel the fire rekindling within him, a collective determination. They had the power to make a change. Just then, from the back of the crowd, Jake spotted Ms. Harris making her way forward, her expression a mix of concern and admiration. "I'm here to listen. If you have the evidence, we need to bring it to the council. This cannot stand." More cheers erupted, the crowd echoing the unmistakable sense that they were part of something monumental, a chance to reclaim their future. In that moment, Jake saw not just the faces of neighbors and friends, but a community bound by shared resilience. As they prepared to march forward to the town hall, Jake caught Sarah's eyes. There was something fierce behind her gaze, hope, yes, but also a mutual recognition that this fight would change everything, potentially their lives. Together, they pressed on, armed with truth, knowing the journey would be fraught with challenges. Yet, in the camaraderie, they found strength they never imagined they possessed. Later that evening, as they entered the crowded town hall, voices clashing against one another, Jake felt as if the air was charged with electricity. They were no longer just individuals, they were a force. And as Ms. Harris introduced their cause, Jake stepped forward, the flash drive now a work of art cloaked in defiance, ready to unveil the truth. With every word that followed, as evidence flooded the council chambers and hope radiated through the crowd, Jake's heart soared. They weren't just fighting for a factory, they were fighting for each other, for their lives, and for the community that had always been their backbone. Jake took a breath, heart full of purpose, ready to face whatever lay ahead. This moment would define them, their story wouldn't end here. Together, they'd rise against the storm, not with fear but with love and determination. They'd face the truth and transform it into a beacon of hope. The fight for their town had only just begun. And now, you need to subscribe to the channel. Don't miss out on exclusive stories like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, show your support. Also, comment your reactions to this emotional ending. Let us know how it made you feel. And for heaven's sake, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.